You're watching Going Underground with me, Afshin Rattansi. Coming up in the show, the civilian death toll is mounting with America and Britain at war again in the Middle East. So, what are the risks of a British war without end? We ask veteran Middle East reporter Patrick Cockburn about what lies ahead. And the Tories go to Birmingham tomorrow to celebrate their record. But how impressive is it when you map their progress in sustaining one of the worst countries in Europe for wealth inequality? Plus, if you're a young comedian, are you brave enough to criticize David Cameron? All this and more on today's Going Underground. Here we go again. Parliament has decided 3.5 years since the disastrous British intervention in Libya, which turned the fifth largest oil power on earth into a base camp for ISIS, we are going to war again. Within the last 24 hours, the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition reiterated their support in Parliament for the Free Syrian Army. The support comes just days after senior commanders of the FSA admitted that it was collaborating with ISIS and the al-Nusra Front. So we are simultaneously bankrolling and fighting ISIS. And right now, RAF tornadoes may be firing missiles on Iraq, adding to the airstrikes of President Obama on Syria. Innocent civilians have already died in the campaign. Each one will no doubt become a propaganda tool of ISIS, helping to persuade poverty-stricken Sunni Muslims to take up the cause against so-called Anglo-American imperialism. And NATO ally Turkey will no doubt be turning a blind eye. So why are Russia, China, Syria and Iran so quiet about yet another Western war in the Middle East? Could it be that a new democratic Middle East, unendangered by British-supported dictators, may rise out of the ashes as not only ISIS, but Britain is defeated too? Britain is backing Washington and a coalition of Arab dictatorships as they began their bombing campaign in Syria this week. But as multi-million-pound weapons drop on the impoverished towns and cities of the Levant, is the situation really as simple as our parliament is making out? Joining me in the studio is veteran reporter Patrick Cockburn, who has spent years covering conflicts in the Middle East and has just written a new book entitled The Jihadis Return, ISIS and the New Sunni Uprising. Welcome, Patrick, to Going Underground. Let's begin with Britain's role. Would even be legal against this network of death, as President Obama calls it?
I don't know if it's legal, but it is sort of signing up with one of the great sort of political messes in history, or plunging into the mess, if you like, that Britain will play a small role in an air campaign. Will this air campaign succeed in eliminating or even containing ISIS? Extremely unlikely. It failed when the Americans had 150,000 troops in Iraq, and it failed obviously in Afghanistan. So it's curious, this enthusiasm to sign up to something which we know is very unlikely to get anywhere.
Now, it's obviously terrible for the relatives of those hostages, but is it then just those hostage videos that are making such an impact, making people believe, not in what you were just saying, but that we must go to war and we can conquer ISIS?
I'm not sure people do believe that. Obviously, these are ritual murders by ISIS make people very angry, and you think you should, people think you should hit them back. But I think popular instinct is that here we go again, like the wars previously in Iraq or Afghanistan, that there's no end to it, and overall it's better to keep out of it.
Well, poll ratings showing the opposite. Now we're seeing more cross-party support. I mean, compared to that seminal vote, as some people describe it, when Britain said, no, we won't bomb Damascus in defense, arguably, of those forces that we're now attacking.
Well, I think people do feel that ISIS are a pretty bad lot, that they have ritually murdered 2 American journalists, a British aid worker, on television. So it's not surprising that people feel it should be eliminated. It's a different question of can it be eliminated, or is it misleading to boil everything down to a response to a single atrocity, when this is a crisis of immense complexity.
Do you think Obama and Cameron want Assad to fall now?
Well, they do and they don't. I mean, that's part of the complexity.
But say in the next couple of days, would they like it?
No, because it could create a tremendous vacuum of authority. And who is likely to fill it? Well, among others, it's likely to be ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra, the official affiliate of Al-Qaeda in Pakistan. So they wouldn't. But this has been going on for a couple of years, that they wanted, they maintained this war against Assad. The purpose of negotiations at Geneva, too, according to the US, was meant to be the transition of Assad from power, getting rid of Assad, although it was obvious that Assad controlled 13 out of 14 Syrian provincial capitals, that he wasn't going to go. So in fact, this was a recipe for continuing the war.
So why did they do this, and why now aren't they, well, are they talking to Assad?
They obviously are talking to Assad covertly, as one sort of former British diplomat put it to me, what do you think intelligence services are for?
Because they seem to suggest there were sources to the mainstream media even saying they did let them know, what, in the UN canteen in New York?
They let them know through Jaffrey, the Samantha Power told Jaffrey, the Iraqi foreign minister, who told the Syrians. But, at a more serious level, have they been telling them things? They obviously have, through third parties, And so obviously there is a connection there. But it's part of the sort of the tremendous mess in Syria that by allowing this war to go on for so long, pretending that they wanted Assad to go, but not really wanting Assad to go, that they created conditions in which ISIS has grown up. Now they don't want to do a U-turn, because no government does want to do a U-turn. They don't want to offend the Saudis and others who were backing the jihadis previously. But they obviously are acting in parallel with Assad and to some degree collaborating with him.
So you chart about the changes maybe that have been occurring in Saudi Arabia as regards their funding of ISIS. Do you think someone from outer space would look at this and say Britain has basically been doing Saudi bidding now for years?
Well, they've gone, obviously they're allied to Saudi Arabia, as is the US. I mean, it always seems to me it's been, an extraordinary hypocrisy since 2011. One can take it back to World War II, but certainly since 2011, the beginning of the Arab uprisings, that there was Britain, there was America, supposedly backing secular Democrats in Syria and Egypt and Libya. But who are we doing this in alliance with? We were doing it in alliance with Saudi Arabia and Qatar and UAE, which are the last theocratic absolute monarchies on earth.
And Obama only too proud to say when he launched the first airstrikes that he was doing it with them. I want to come down to the you mentioned in the book, people have forgotten maybe about this, that Obama promised that the 28 pages of the 9/11 Commission report which were redacted, were finally going to be released, and they haven't. Why do you think that is?
Because they think it will offend the Saudis, because it's assumed that these 28 pages refer to members of the Saudi royal family knowing people or financing people who are involved in 9/11. And they've managed to not publish that now for a decade. But it shows the influence of Saudi Arabia.
I mean, I couldn't tell whether it was a failure of intelligence, our intelligence services, or it was a success. At points in the book you mention that, obviously, you say that the NATO ally Turkey were involved in helping ISIS, and you say the Free Syrian Army wholly controlled by Western and Arab intelligence agencies.
Oh, yes. I think that, actually, I think the military commander of the Free Syrian Army actually said on the record to an American news agency a few weeks ago that, we're not even in the loop anymore, that the American intelligence sends arms, equipment, instructions straight to our remaining units in Syria, both north and south.
And many of these units would now be used against those trying to combat ISIS?
Well, we don't know, because that's the complexity, that supposedly there is a third force, which is going to be drawn from the Syrian moderates. A bit difficult to find them on the map, but let's suppose they're there. 5,000 of them are to go to a camp after being carefully vetted, camp in Saudi Arabia, and then they'll come back to Syria. And these poor fellows are supposedly going to fight both ISIS and the Syrian army, the Syrian government. This is sort of an absurdity, but it's a sort of a political excuse. What is really going to happen? Difficult to know, because at some point, this is, we can talk about this in general terms and play around with, but there can be specific decisions taken. What if ISIS attack Aleppo and are attacking Syrian army positions in Aleppo?
Who do we support?
Yeah, who do we support?
Or
do we say, well,
Britain
we don't?
bomb both sides?
Do we say now we're against ISIS, we're against the Syrian government, so we don't do anything, or do we attack ISIS, in which case that benefits the Syrian government?
You've traveled widely in this particular region. You know that, I know you say that rather than reporters, you talk to boys selling cigarettes. When you get information, when you talk to people on the ground, you can see how people would think it's not the incompetence that you seem to characterize it as. It's actually well thought out. David Cameron knows what he's doing. They want to deliberately create a constant state of chaos so they can sell arms to the Persian Gulf dictatorships and so on. Did you witness that view?
No, well, people think that. I think one can be over-conspiratorial. I don't think one has to think it's just incompetence. Saudi Arabia, people, you have a monarchy there that has survived a very long time. There used to be Arab nationalists who were trying to overthrow it. They aren't trying to do that now. There used to be socialists who are trying to do the same thing. The Saudis have stayed in business. So obviously they know how to manipulate power, and they know how to manipulate foreign allies like America and Britain.
David Cameron has been very quick to echo the American sentiment that it's all al-Maliki's fault and now there's a new leader in Baghdad, it's all going to change. You say, no, there were loads of Iraqi politicians warning the West that this was going to happen, and yet it fell on deaf ears.
Well, Maliki was a very bad prime minister. He was sectarian, he was extremely corrupt. But what really destabilized Iraq was the continuing war in Syria from 2011. Because you had a sort of balance within Iraq between the Sunni, the Shia, and the Kurds. But the uprising of the Sunni in Syria destabilized that, as everybody in Baghdad, all the political leaders said.
Patrick Cockburn, thank you.
Thank you.